So welcome to a special edition of Race Talk Revolution. I'm Reverend Lane Cobb, um, founder of Race Talk Revolution, where your voice matters. And I am here today talking to Ms. Vanessa Spiegel. Vanessa Spiegel is a founding member of Teach the Truth Westchester, a grassroots coalition aimed at supporting schools and teachers in affirming the diverse identities of students and accurately recounting the nation's history. She has taught science in New York City since 2003 and is currently teaching urban farming at Bronx International High School. In Vanessa's classes, students learn sustainable, culturally relevant land management practices and herbalism through firsthand experience at the Morris Campus Farm. She recently received an Outstanding Career and Technical Educator Award because of her work with this unique program. As an educator and parent, Vanessa recognizes the importance of empowering our students through teaching a culturally relevant curriculum. You can find out more about Teach the Truth Westchester at www.teachthetruth914.org. Teachthetruth914.org. Vanessa, welcome. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Indeed. And I just think the work you do is fabulous. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about Teach the Truth Westchester. Why did you decide to start that organization, and what have you been doing?
Sure. So it's been a long journey, actually. I was lucky to get connected to this an education project early on, and their Teach the Truth initiative, which, Lane, thank you so much. You participated. We did a whole thing for Westchester County on teaching the truth and supporting teaching the truth in Westchester. And this started really around the time that all of these anti-education, anti-CRT bills were popping up across the country. And I think as New Yorkers, we thought that it wouldn't happen locally. And then we started to see some of our teachers, a counselor in Yorktown, a teacher in Tarrytown, were starting to get attacked for things that they were covering or not covering. It was really just an outright attack on what they were doing. And so a lot of local activists were infuriated and wanted to participate. We started by just kind of building the community and showing up at school board meetings that were contentious, ones where issues like diversity, equity, inclusion were on the topic list. And we started seeing groups like Moms for Liberty and Save Our Schools, which are both groups that have some pretty big national backings and fundings from the conservative think tank groups, showing up at these school boards. And we just wanted the community members, we wanted the boards, we wanted parents, teachers to know that even though some groups may be loud, we are there to support them. And we would leave it up to the local districts, whether they wanted members that didn't live there to speak or not. But we started with that. And then last year, we really got into school board elections, supporting candidates that really supported our missions in making sure that our students got an accurate history that is representative of the communities that we live within, and prides itself on being more inclusive than what some other groups might want. And so we supported those school board candidates. Now we're actually working to build out liaisons. So we're looking to have a school board liaison in every district that can come to our meetings, but also attends their school board meetings. The goal here is really to build community, because this is going to be, I think, unfortunately, that this is going to be a long fight to make sure that we keep our education accurate, that we keep our students at the forefront, that this isn't a politicized mission. And so really the easiest way to do that is to have that community, because otherwise it can get tiring very quickly. And with more minds and more community, we have more ideas, we have more support in keeping things going. So that's where we are right now in building liaisons. And we're starting to also build support for the upcoming school board elections as well.
Yes, and thank you for that work. What we see now is that it's really intimidating to be running for a school board. I mean, people taking pot shots. It's gotten so vitriolic, the atmosphere, and it's gotten really dangerous for folk. And you see people, superintendents resigning, in large numbers. They come in, they just can't take it, and then they leave. Why is it so important for history to be taught accurately? And what is the problem here?
Um, that's a really good question. And I think it's so important because, so with it being Black History Month, and with everything that's been going on recently, African American Policy Forum has done a number of new talks, which has been created by Kimberly Crenshaw, one of the founders of CRT. And one of the things that I recently heard, and it's everything that I was thinking about through one of their Black Light series, was that teaching Black history, it was kind of like the fear around it is a fear that if we know what our history is and how we as a nation have oppressed Black Americans, then we feel an innate desire to fix that. And the fear is in trying to fix that. Also, I mean, Black Americans have had so many resistance movements, and they've taught us a lot about resistance. And I think learning about that as well is another fear, because if we can learn about successful resistance, if we can learn about community, developing community, supporting each other, then we can have more power. And that, I think, creates a lot of fear in a lot of people that are making decisions to hinder this education. Education is power, period.
Yeah, education is power, period. Yeah, I love that, and thank you for mentioning um, uh, Kimberly Crenshaw's group. So important. These voices of Black educators who are willing to just get out there in front and say, "Hey, this is the truth," and they're not going to back down. And having said that, um, isn't this just a plot to prop up white supremacy, right? Just taking out accurate history, and not wanting to empower Black and Brown people because you don't want them to learn from um, you don't want them to learn from their history, but also because that history makes white people uncomfortable. I mean, it's just so crazy how people can't see. Listen, this is just feeding into the white power structure wanting to stay in power. Is there any other way to look at this? And you're, as a white educator, advocating for accurate history to be taught. What's your view on that? Is there any other way to look at this other than this is just propping up white supremacy?
I mean, I think that so I think that sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I have a tendency to do that. My kids wake me up at 5:30 a.m. No, so I think that it's absolutely about propping up white supremacy. I mean, I was just thinking about it earlier, and I didn't learn about Reconstruction until I was out of school, and all of the power that that gave. And I think that really what it comes down to is the idea that it makes people uncomfortable is a method to restrain it. I have no control over what happened in the past. I have no control over what my ancestors participated in, but what I can control is what I do about it now. And I think that narrative that it's about making people feel bad is just that. It's just a narrative to try and limit access to this knowledge and to this education. And having that, that white, I mean, honestly, I'm still grappling a lot with white supremacy culture in terms of figuring out how intertwined it is in me and how I've grown up. And I think that by teaching our children about accurate history and teaching our children about this white supremacy culture and systems that have been in place gives them an earlier start in unraveling that and being a true part of community, and not living within these power structures. I think about how much we lose out on by othering people. I mean, I'm the first person to say I don't know anything. I mean, I know some things, but in the grand scheme of what there is to know, it's a tiny blip. And the more that we can be working together, and the more that we can learn from each other, and the less fear that there is around that, um, I can only guess what we could accomplish.
Yeah, and you make a heck of a point, right? I mean, as a racial justice educator, I am constantly looking at how the status quo and the power structure has attempted to really erase the relevance of Black people, the accomplishments of Black people, taking our livelihood, destroyed our families, like all of these things. And what I'm saying, I'm clear, if people don't understand the history and want to look at it through a different lens, they might say, well, this person's just being militant, she's just being one-sided, these are kind of fighting words. But, when you look at moves like Governor DeSantis wanting to take African American history out of the Florida public schools, or textbook companies now not wanting to use the word slavery, things like that. It's just insane. It's kind of like, how can you look out and be a country that says that it has um, the good of all at heart, right? And look at all the citizens and notice that many of your citizens are descendants of slavery, and not be willing to celebrate and lift up the accomplishments and the contributions of those people to this society, which have been many and critical. Absolutely. And so, if you want us to celebrate um, your white heroes, there's Black heroes right there on the same level. What's the problem? It isn't that we're saying we don't want to celebrate your white heroes anymore. It's saying we want to celebrate our Black heroes also. And we want to come to an understanding of, this is the lived experience of Black people in this country. How do we all move together so that we can all prosper together? Isn't that what would make sense, right? Prospering together. Isn't that what would make sense?
Yeah, it's that Heather McGhee's the sum
The
theory,
sum of,
right?
mhm.
That if we give other people credit, that doesn't take away from what we've done in the United States. Even, as a nation, if we talk about that as like the existing body, if we give other people credit in building the United States, then these white forefathers or whatever, that's not going to take away from what the country is and what the country has become. I think it would add to it if we added all of those historical figures, all of the Black Americans, African Americans that have literally built our country. If we could understand and work with that history, it would just make our country. I can't. I don't know what word I'm looking for, but it would just make our countries just feel so much more, I don't peaceful. That might not be the right word, but honorable. If we could give more credit where credit is due and recognize all of the contributions that were made.
Yeah, well, we're certainly tarnishing our image in the world. Certainly, you can't hold up yourself as a bastion of freedom and liberty, and be sitting on the neck of a large proportion of your citizenry, for sure. Um, One of the things that really does bother me, and of course, I think for a lot of us, when the governor of Florida was talking about having consulted with the regents about making changes in this course, and then now they say, well, no, that's not true. He didn't consult with us, and we didn't take out these courses. We just put them on, a digital platform, and we made them optional studies instead of a mandatory part of the course. I haven't seen the course. I don't know. And I know that I have talked to several of my colleagues that said, oh, okay, I feel better now. Right. But the original feeling of, wow, like the Board of Regents, is going to now cave to right wing ideology now. Like, what is this? Is this the beginning of the end? And honestly, to me, it really does feel like the beginning of the end. Like, this is crazy now. Um, any thoughts on our school curriculum being dictated by local legislatures? And it has been that way all the time, but it never on the national stage. On one hand, it's really good that's now on the national stage because people recognize how different what you learn in one state is from another state. I think we're also spoiled here in New York because we feel like we're in a really liberal state, but there's some of the worst school segregation, in the country in New York State. So what's to be done here?
You just made so many valid points. I mean, one of the things that's interesting is that, like, on a national scale, we have really been, you know, we have been marked on a national scale, right? So Texas is actually like the leading buyer in textbooks. And so textbooks have catered to the Texas Department of Education and their wants and needs for years. And a lot of people don't know that. Some people, I think that's coming out a little bit more, but a lot of people don't know that. So this has been going on for a long time, and it is good that it's on a much larger scale because it's getting much more recognition. Um, in terms of what's happening with AP African American Studies, College Board is saying that this is a natural process. And I've read a couple of articles in the Washington Post and other sources, and I'm happy to send some of those links too if you want them. But they're saying that people that have participated in the creation of this curriculum, they have created in other creations, the creation of other AP curriculum, and that it's a natural process for it to go out and for it to come back. But the way that this was spun really does provide this, we're catering to DeSantis. And that's not what education is. And that's not what it should be. I'll share a couple of things. Let me just find some of this. I found a recent article that I believe is also in the Washington Post. It was posted as opinion, but it shows a crucial revisions of terms that were in the curriculum is of April 2022 and the update as of February 2023. So intersectionality in April was written 19 times. In 2022, in 2023, it was down to 1. Womanism, 14 in April 2022, 0 in February 2023. Systemic, 9 in April 2022, 0 in February 2023. The Movement for Black Lives, 6 in 2022 and 0 in 2023. And Kimberly Crenshaw, right? 5 in April 2022, and again, 0 in 2023. So, and then there were some other things that were lifted up. Reparations, incarceration, both were 15 in 2022 and down to 1 in 2023. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, whether or not it was always optional or not, and that's something that, the news is saying that it was always optional and now it's being spun that maybe it was and maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is that there are important concepts that are being taken out intentionally, whether that was because of DeSantis's criticisms, the Florida Department of Education's criticisms or not, that's what it looks like. And it needs, personally, I think that the College Board should have made a much more strong statement originally, instead of letting this get away. Ideally, they would say, well, if this isn't up to your standing, then maybe all of our AP classes aren't up to your standing. But it's also a money-making machine. It's also a money-making machine built on some other, racial issues as well. And so there's a lot to think about with that. I think that it's infuriating. I think that the other part of it that makes me so angry is that there are a lot of Black scholars that worked on this, that put their time and effort into this. Henry Louis Gates, for example. And by giving DeSantis the amount of space that you have given him, you are then reharming the community that you're supposed to be lifting up. And students want to learn all of this. I took AP American History, and I remember doing my project, and I actually looked at the workings of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. to compare and contrast. And I think that was probably the most work that I've had in school in terms of Black history, something that I chose to do on my own. And so bringing this into schools is great. In Westchester, we actually have an amazing teacher, Jillian McCrae, who teaches at Austin High School, who teaches a SUNY course on college racism, classism, and sexism, which I think is another way of going around this. Instead of counting on the College Board, maybe linking directly to colleges and universities that want to do this. I'm also somewhat against testing. I've been very lucky that I've been in schools that are project-based focused. And I think that that's probably the route, hopefully, that we'll go, but we'll see.
We'll see indeed. I tell you, that's one of the things that I was going to ask you about what is a call to action. And one of the calls to action that I'd like you to say is, what is the call to action to educators? Because you have the responsibility to educate all of your students equally well. And we know the extent to which every institution in this country is affected by issues of race and racism. And in our educational system, it is entrenched, albeit kind of underlying, right? And so being innovative, I know, is one of the things that educators do best. So what would you say are some things that educators should be now looking at doing on their own?
Well, I think as an educator myself, educators are under attack right now. And so the first thing that I want to say is that we can't do it if we're burnt out. And so in terms of participating in this fight, it's vital, it's important, but we also need to be patient with ourselves, because if we aren't, then we won't be able to be in it for the long haul. And I would much rather have teachers in places where they can effect change, even if they're taking a break here and there for their own well-being, than have these educators out of the system, because that harms our students. So, I mean, I think in terms of a call for action, one would be take a break, breathe. We can do this. We can keep moving. We can keep fighting. We just need to slow down and breathe and take care of ourselves too. But also there are amazing, I really truly believe that building community is going to be the base for moving forward. And so there are amazing groups like Black Lives Matter at School. There's a number of different, not franchises, but there's a number of different locations. So if you're in a big city, but even if you're not, you can join the National Black Lives Matter at School movement and be with the groups of educators that are like-minded, that are working to make change. Early February, we just had the Black Lives Matter at School week of action, which happens every year. And so teachers can also work towards next year's, I'm sure everybody's taking a break right now, but they can work towards next year's week of action and participate in that. There's also groups like the Anti-Racist Alliance of Educators. So finding a group that you can work with, that you can think through with, that you can have joy with as well in this, that's vital too, to keep that movement going. and just making sure that we're continuing to bring these lessons into our classrooms as much as possible. You know, in certain areas like Florida, there you might need to be a little bit more careful, but there are also great groups that are working in Florida to make sure that they are supporting our educators as well. It's everywhere, right? Resistance is everywhere. Support is everywhere. We just have to make sure that we go and find it and that we continue to put one foot in front of the other.
Mm, wise. Yes, I did see that there is at least one pastor who has said that he is willing to offer these classes in his church to students who will come and learn. So that this is very important for us to bolster our educators. How about parents? What's your call to action for parents?
Pay attention. Go to the school board meetings, show up at the school board meetings, say what you want for your kids. Right now, there's a huge push for parental involvement. And I think that's what a lot of the narrative is around preventing these conversations in classrooms, preventing these racial conversations in classrooms. But if we show up and we say that, no, this is important. And yes, I want my white child to learn about race and to learn about the history of Black Americans, the history of African Americans in this country. That's important because if we don't speak up, we're not going to be heard. Another thing is to bring resources home, have these conversations at home. I have a 7-year-old and, well, almost 7-year-old in a couple weeks and a 5-year-old. And we've been having age appropriate conversations since George Floyd was murdered. You know, we had some local rallies here in town, and I was talking to my son, who at that age was 4 or 5, about why mommy was going to these rallies and why it's important to support our neighbors and to make sure that everybody is treated with respect and equally. And I think at that age it was appropriate, and the conversational change as they grow up. But bring books home, age appropriate books home, read books with diverse characters, books with joy, right? Not just diverse characters about slavery, but bring in, you know, joyful stories. I think Hair Love is one of the ones that's coming to mind right now. Just make it an everyday conversation and don't shy away from it, because I think by shying away from something, we're telling our kids that there's something wrong with it, and there's not.
Yes, and look for opportunities to let our kids have diverse relationships also, because we are definitely siloed and our neighborhoods are still not as diverse as they might be, and our schools aren't either. So we have to go the extra yard to create play dates, collaboration opportunities, yeah, socialization opportunities. It's so interesting. So then what is your call to action for our youth?
You know, I feel like our youth are also so silenced, right? You have all these adults standing around making these decisions and saying, well, you don't know better. And that's not true. Our youth know a lot, and this is their future and their education, and they have a right to have a say in that. So similarly, I would tell them to speak up, talk to a trusted adult, a parent, a teacher, a neighbor about what you're seeing in your schools. If something is unfair, if something's happening that isn't just, share that information. But also there are community groups as well, right? In Westchester, we have the Westchester Youth Alliance and the Westchester County Youth Council that will help empower our students as well, our youth as well. And it's important that we take the time to do that. And there are groups nationally, there are groups in other cities as well that step up. I know that Teens Take Charge is reactivating in New York City. They're an amazing group of student leaders. And empowering our youth to speak up and to tell them and to let them know that their voice matters and it makes change and that what they want matters. I think that's an important step to take.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. Are you optimistic that we can actually create an educational system that isn't biased against people of color?
I have to be, or I couldn't do this work. Absolutely, I am. I think that there's a number of things in place that are going to need to change. One is absolutely funding for how our education is funded. And I think I mentioned it before with project-based assessment tasks, where students do projects that like real world projects where they learn a topic in depth and they research it and they enact this project instead of taking tests, is a way to go. I have this vision in my head of, sorry, before I get into that, joy as well, joy in education, because I feel like sometimes with this like rote way of doing things, a lot of students lose some of their joy. And that's what brings me to this vision that I have of an education where students can really take the things that they're interested in and dive into all the different subject areas by looking at that topic, that subject area, and doing different projects and really kind of living with what they're learning for a long time. It would cost a lot of money. So that goes with the
I was going to
funding.
say, yeah, you're talking about private school stuff there, sister, right?
But it doesn't have to be private school. It really doesn't, and it shouldn't. And why should it be separated in that way, right? All of our students should have access to learning things that they're interested in, to have smaller class sizes, to have communities, full communities of diverse members, right? Have Black students, have Indian students, have Native American students, white students, all in the classroom sharing ideas, sharing their culture, right? Because again, we all have so much to share with each other and to learn from each other. And it's just important that we don't lose sight of that community and the growth that's available when we're all together.
Okay, I love that. That sounds like a note to end on. So tell us again, how can we get involved in Teach the Truth Westchester? And is the Zen Education Project still an active volunteer opportunity for people, or is that done?
The Zen Education Project is also a really great resource for teachers. They have a number of different resources, especially for teachers that teach history. They have a number of different resources and curriculum and lesson plans that are accessible. And so they still exist and they're still doing a lot in that regard. And that's definitely much more of a teacher resource, but also a parent resource, again, to have those conversations at home. But you can reach Teach the Truth through teachthetruth914.org, or even email us at teachthetruth914@gmail.com. And we are happy to support. We are looking for liaisons in different districts across Westchester County. So we have a number, and we always welcome more. If anybody is interested in doing that, it's a great community to be a part of so that we can support each other in moving things forward for our students.
Say more about what a liaison does.
Sure. Liaisons. So we say that liaisons should attend their school board meeting, and we know that parents and community members are oftentimes busy. So if you can't personally attend, if you have a community that can attend, so you know what's going on, and just attending our meetings once a month to keep us updated. We're actually going to be holding a liaison organizing session. So we're going to look at how to kind of build our base and include more people in not just the liaisons, but in the different districts, and make sure that people can show up to school board meetings and support all of these requests that we have. And because Westchester is such a big district, it's a little bit different for each district, but yeah, it really kind of applies to what's going on in each person's individual area. But again, having that community, having that support, having that knowledge to share with is a great resource.
And are you still looking for candidates to run for school board?
Oh, yes, we are. We are looking to support and endorse candidates. And I think that, again, what you mentioned earlier, that it was really tough last year. And so I think people are kind of shying away from that. But if you feel strongly that our students should have access to this true, accurate history, that our students should be representative, that our diverse students should have representation in the classroom, that they shouldn't be, tucked in the corner, their history as well shouldn't be tucked in the corner. We definitely need candidates to run. So please reach out. And if you're not in connection with people in your district, we can certainly make those connections as well.
Thank you so much, Vanessa Spiegel, Teach the Truth Westchester. I'm so, so grateful to you for your time and for your commitment to doing this work. What is it like for you? My last question is going to sound ridiculous, but it's on my mind and I want to ask it.
Yeah.
What is it like for you being a person who is not a person of color, at least on the face of it, and doing this work? Who are your allies, and how is that for you? How is that experience for you?
I have been, and we at Teach the Truth have been very lucky to have been connected through as an education project. And I was working briefly with African American Policy Forum and their education working group. And we're now working closely with NYU Metro Center and doing a lot of trainings with them in terms of community building and organizing. So that is one space that I have a lot of support and people that are showing me how to be a better ally. Um, because I am the first to admit that I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything. I exist in a white body. I am a white woman, and I don't know what it is like. So I do know that um, I know that my life and my children's life can be better when we are in community with others, when we are in community with African American communities, with Hispanic communities, with every other community that is in Westchester County working together, because it's just so important to me that we work together and support each other and make sure that everyone is treated with the utmost respect and humanness that we exist on this earth with.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for lifting up humanity. We are indeed all in this together, and we need white allies in this fight for equity for sure. So thank you.
Thank you.